For thousands of years, across continents and cultures, one name has echoed through the human story. A name shared in reverence by billions: Abraham. To some, he is the father of nations. To others, a prophet, a patriarch, a pioneer of faith. And to all who trace their spiritual lineage to him, he is a symbol of something profoundly human: the search for meaning, belonging, and the divine. Three of the world's great religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, look to Abraham as a foundational figure. Yet each tradition sees him through a different lens, shaped by centuries of interpretation, struggle, and hope. These faiths, often portrayed as divided, are in fact branches of the same ancient tree, rooted in the same soil, nourished by the same stories, and reaching towards the same sky. But who was Abraham really? A man of unwavering faith? A wanderer guided by visions? A unifier? Or the beginning of a long, complicated family history? This documentary does not seek to judge, nor to elevate one belief above another. Instead, it invites us to explore the shared heritage of the Abrahamic traditions, how they diverged, how they intertwined, and how they continue to shape the world that we live in today. Because beyond theology and ritual lies a deeper truth. The story of Abraham is, in many ways, the story of humanity itself, a story of migration, a story of promises and sacrifices, a story of identity, conflict, and reconciliation, a story of children, millions upon millions, who inherited not only his name, but his questions. In a world often fractured by misunderstanding, the legacy of Abraham offers both a challenge and an opportunity. A challenge to confront the divisions that have grown between his descendants, and an opportunity to rediscover the common ground beneath our feet. This is not just a historical journey, it is a human one. A journey into the beliefs that shape nations, the rituals that bind communities, and the stories that give people purpose. So join us as we walk the ancient paths of the Middle East, listen to the voices of scholars and believers, and uncover the threads that connect Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Threads woven across millennia, threads that remind us that, despite our differences, we are bound by a shared origin. This is the story of faith, the story of identity, the story of a family whose branches span the globe. This is the children of Abraham.
I'd like you to come with me on an amazing journey to the heart of three great faiths. They're faiths whose extreme voices speak of intolerance.
God wants justice. And if someone comes to kill you, you have to kill him first. This is Judaism.
Muhammad is dead. He's a dead prophet. And Christ is a living Savior.
Everything that I see is in the Quran. And I will tell you, yes, you will be in the hellfire unless you take Islam.
Yet in contrast, there are others so touched by God that they build bridges to their enemies.
I believe that God created man. He didn't create the Jewish man.
Neither Islam, nor Christianity, nor Judaism are calling for the perishing and the killing of the others.
But not all see the world of belief through those eyes. On death row, you'll also meet a zealot filled with murderous revenge.
We were lashing out at the Arab world. We didn't know who was at blame. We didn't care. Let's get them. Let's bomb them. Let's attack them.
A divided human family in turmoil. One God, three faiths. Yet despite the strife, one towering religious figure brings them all together in hope: the prophet Abraham. Through him, God blessed all of humanity. So why have we, his children, betrayed his legacy?
When I was a young boy at Catholic primary school, I was told that all non-Catholics would burn in hell. Protestants were rather strange creatures who liked Henry VIII and didn't have a set of rosary beads. And as for synagogues and mosques and what went on in there, well, that was another part of the planet. But how the world has changed.
I'd known next to nothing about Islam and Judaism when I first came here to the Holy Land 20 years ago. This is Bethlehem in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. When I was 21, I'd spent some time here teaching students prior to training for the Catholic priesthood. Now, mindful of all the fallout after September the 11th, I returned to begin a journey, curious to know more about religions different from my own and to see what had become of my old stomping ground. First, my old house. There it was, with its walls proudly plastered with photos celebrating the bravery of an Islamic martyr. There'd been none of those back in the 1980s. Next, the Church of the Nativity. This place had been a personal favourite of mine all those years ago, a sanctuary from the hustle and bustle of life outside. And the first impressions were reassuringly familiar. That is, until I checked out the artwork on the walls above. This was part of the damage caused in the siege of Bethlehem Church 2 years ago, when the Israeli army had opened fire in pursuit of wanted Palestinians. The tensions between the communities represented by these faith traditions appeared greater than ever. When I trained for the Catholic priesthood after my first trip to the Middle East, I'd remained blissfully unaware of other religions, the way they revered the same prophets, and of the central figure of Abraham. As a naive young man, neither had I asked any of the questions that now seemed so pressing.
I mean, if there is one God, why did he, she, or it permit so many different religions, each professing an exclusive truth over the others?
Why do people who say they hold God close to their hearts behave in such a violent fashion? And is religion now the decisive factor in what some are calling the global clash of civilizations? There's a greater need than ever for common ground, and that explains the sudden surge of interest in a man who lived 4,000 years ago, the prophet Abraham. For all their historical tensions, these religions all have him as an iconic figure, a father in faith. Don't take my word for it. Here's the proof. A prominent Muslim, an archbishop, and a rabbi all singing his praises.
Abraham had a very high position in Islam. Every day, 17 times a day, Muslims bless Abraham.
Trying to focus on this figure could be a focal point of the beginnings of a new dialogue with others, based on what we have in common.
I think that the commonality with regards to the personality of Abraham is far more overwhelming and predominant than the differences.
As we seek to build bridges, Abraham can already lay claim to being an interfaith superstar. As you'd expect, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all have different takes on their big patriarch. But the more I've looked into Abraham's story, the more I've come to realize that you've got to pay very close attention to a tale which precedes his arrival on the scene. It's set in the book of Genesis, in an era where man spoke with a common tongue and worshipped multiple gods.
Throughout the earth, men spoke the same language with the same vocabulary. Come, they said, let us build ourselves a tower with its top reaching heaven. Let us make a name for ourselves.
The story of the Tower of Babel is an early warning about the danger of hijacking religion and putting man's agenda before that of God.
In building a tower to reach up to heaven, men wanted to become like the gods themselves, but the one true God deemed this arrogant.
According to Genesis chapter 11, God had an ingenious way of stopping man in his tracks.
God said, "Come, let us confuse their language so they can no longer understand one another." And he scattered them over the face of the earth.
This is the legacy of Babel, a divided world of competing tongues and many gods. And when man went to war, he did so in the name of his God against that of his enemy. But, as I was about to discover, God would not leave man helpless. He would send Abraham with a message to heal the divisions. Abraham's overriding legacy is monotheism, the belief that there is one indivisible God, supreme creator and source of all life. All three of the so-called Abrahamic religions have this as a defining characteristic. I've come to Turkey, a country which is key in my desire to get to the heart of Abraham's message and his legacy. This is the town of Urfa, not far from the Syrian border. Jewish and Christian tradition has it that Abraham came from Mesopotamia in modern-day Iraq, but many Muslims trace his roots to this picturesque town in the south of the country. Abraham's Cave is a hotspot for pilgrims who flock to see where one of Islam's key religious figures was born.
This.
Accompanying me was Mehmet Oymak, a local scholar, author, and religious authority on the early life of the Prophet Ibrahim, as he's known to more than 1 billion Muslim believers.
So Mehmet, tell me, what's the story about Abraham in this cave?
His mother gave birth to him secretly in this cave, and according to legend, every day represented a year of his life. So after 7 days, he had become 7 years old.
The young Abraham came to an early realization that all of creation was grounded in one omnipotent source of being. Men who worshipped planetary objects and mistook them for all-powerful deities had to be confronted. And Abraham was not one to duck a fight.
The Quran has a whole surah or chapter devoted to Abraham, and it depicts a feisty, rebellious young man who was endlessly arguing with his father, who was an old-fashioned worshipper of idols, false gods.
Nor was he one to be put off by people's social status. Having seen off his father and put him right on God, the next target in his sights was a king called Nimrod. Nimrod was obsessed by watching the skies and would gaze in awe at the heavenly bodies, imputing divine status to many of the objects around him.
And here he is, worshipping the three false gods of the moon, the sun, and the stars.
This was all a bit much for young Abraham. He knew these objects were all contingent on the ultimate creator. Here at the royal citadel, he engaged Nimrod. The king accused him of impudence and had him hurled down into the fires beneath. The breakthrough to monotheism seemed to have been vanquished in its tracks. But according to the local legend, God's blessing was with Abraham. The blazing logs of fire were transformed into carp, and the huge fire became a picturesque lake. These are some of the most overspoiled fish on the planet. Locals deem them to be sacred, and if you give in to temptation and eat one, you will pay a heavy price. You will go blind. All three faiths have their share of eyebrow-raising tales like this one, and you can take them or leave them as you wish, but the key point is this.
After the chaos of the Tower of Babel, Abraham becomes a focal point for the unity of man before God. All the tribes of the earth shall bless themselves by you, says God in the book of Genesis. So we might have different cultures, we might have different languages, But if there's one creator, then the key inclusive message is this: there is but one human family before the God who sustains the whole of creation.
Before I left Urfa, my guide was keen to impress upon me a key point. The campaign to wage war on idols and false gods in Abraham's time speaks as much to man now as it did then.
When we look at the history of humanity thousands of years on, people's thoughts and ideas haven't really changed that much. In King Nimrod's time, he had his false gods. Now, in modern times, we have our own false gods. The gods of power, of money, and the beauty of women.
Abraham severed ties with his father and with the land of his birth to obey the call of God and undertake a long and mysterious journey into the unknown. He covered hundreds of miles, taking in many countries of the modern-day Middle East. And advancing in years in the twilight of his life, he became increasingly desperate for a child.
The quest to start a family was to prove a significant development in Abraham's life. Abraham here was very keen to be a father. The problem was that Sarah, his wife, was thought to be barren. And so Abraham took on a second wife, his Egyptian maid, Hagar. Now, she produced Ishmael, but miracle of miracles, 13 years later, Sarah here was to produce Isaac. Now, the story of these two sons is deeply significant because Muslims, on the one hand, trace the line of the Prophet Muhammad all the way back to Ishmael here, whereas Jews assert that Isaac is the more significant of the two of them, and they insist that the Bible says that the land of Canaan will be given to his descendants. And after he is born, Sarah here insists that both Hagar and Ishmael are banished. The children of Abraham are separated. It's to be the first of Abraham's many trials.
Bob Dylan's song picks up on the most famous Abrahamic story of all, one with huge relevance for 21st century man, God's request that he sacrifice a son. Real physical images of the prophet are hard to come by, but a rare one is housed here in the remains of the 6th century synagogue in northern Israel. A mosaic depicts this most famous scene and story of Abraham's long life, the ultimate test of his faith. In a world threatened by religious violence, the scene is an eerie reminder of a central modern preoccupation, the simple question: would you kill for God? But why would a loving creator make this demand? I enlisted the help of David Rosen, a leading liberal rabbi, to shed further light on the story.
Many people might think God is a bit of a sicko asking a man to do this to his son.
Well, of course, that depends how you interpret the text. Jewish tradition has understood that the main message of the test of Abraham, when God calls upon him to offer up his unique child who is the object of the promise and of the hope and of his own continuity, is in fact a test to see the devotion of his motivation, of his love of God, and that there was never any intention for him to actually sacrifice it. And what God wants is the genuine devotion of the sincere heart.
Was child sacrifice very common at the time?
Indeed, it was considered to be the normative way of expressing one's total devotion to whatever idolatrous deity one worshipped.
So the fact that God intervenes and stops this
in a perverted way, might mean that the story is about anti-violence, not about violence.
That's exactly the way normative Jewish tradition has understood it.
Now, you as a Jew, and myself as a Christian, think that that creature down there who's about to get it in the neck is Isaac, but of course Muslims think it's Ishmael. Is that a problem for interfaith dialogue for the purpose of trying to bring greater harmony between the three faiths?
Well, it could be a problem if your concern is with whose text is right, my text or your text. But that is not a healthy way to approach interfaith relations and the area of interreligious dialogue. And therefore, if we seek to say, well, what is the message behind the narrative? The exact identity of the characters is less important than what the message is conveying. I think one can go beyond that, and I think that's what we have to do. But in the dialogue, I have no problem in saying Isaac according to my tradition, Ishmael according to yours.
Right. But would you be happy if that were Ishmael?
It wouldn't make any difference to me in terms of the message.
This is a narrative that has inspired artists and composers down the centuries, and it still maintains a fascination and grip on the human psyche. And like so many biblical stories, the punchline is not what you'd expect. God appears to set up a sacrifice, only in order to tell man that he does not want human blood. Against that backdrop, it's easy to see why Abraham is the central player at the world's biggest religious festival, the Hajj. If you're a Muslim, making this trip to Mecca at least once in your lifetime is one of the 5 so-called pillars of the Islamic faith. 2 million pilgrims turn up every year to commemorate God's sparing of Abraham's son and to circle a black cubed structure, the Kaaba. For Muslims, this ancient place of worship to the one true God was built by Abraham and his son Ishmael. To modern-day religious extremists, the figure of Abraham represents a real challenge. For sure, he's a colossal patriarch across 3 huge faiths, but significantly, he is a man who not only gave up ties to his land, but also family roots as well, in a desire to follow a most uncertain journey. Now, we, his children, from time to time, haven't been especially kind to one another, so perhaps it's time to move on and ask the question why his family have been so horribly dysfunctional. The Mount of Olives, just a mile outside the city walls of Jerusalem. I'm on my way to see Archbishop Sambi, the Pope's spokesman in Israel. In seeking to examine the troubled triangular relationship between Abraham's descendants, Catholic-Jewish tensions are an obvious place to start. One historical event has meant that Christians, and the Church of Rome especially, are having to reassess their track record with the Jewish people.
As a 12-year-old boy, I vividly remember watching the TV series World at War. And it was the first time in my life that I saw images of thousands of Jews being herded off to concentration camps. What I wasn't prepared for was to discover several years later that it was the Catholic Church, my own church, that was being accused of anti-Semitism.
Much of the focus has been on the role of the wartime pontiff, Pope Pius XII, who many have accused of turning a blind eye to mounting evidence of Nazi atrocities. But all this comes in the context of centuries of the depiction of Jews as Christ killers, a description which Rome and other churches often left unchallenged and occasionally promoted. Jews were subsequently the subject of violent pogroms and discrimination. It was against this setting that John Paul II made a historic visit to Israel 4 years ago, a journey that the Polish Pope had eagerly awaited for the best part of 2 decades.
So many times, the Pope, from the beginning of his pontificate, has announced the desire to come as a pilgrim to the Holy Land. So it has been a very long preparation inside of himself for this visit.
On a visit to the Wailing Wall, the Pope took a piece of paper with a prayer on it. It invoked the common heritage of faith in Abraham and his descendants, and it begged forgiveness for centuries of wrongdoings by Christians against the Jews.
You say the Pope asked for forgiveness, but that requires actually being honest with yourself about things that we've done wrong.
Exactly.
See, one thing I can't forget is this prayer from my childhood, which talked about, let us pray also for the perfidious Jews, that our Lord God would withdraw the veil from their hearts. How could that prayer be in a book like this after the Holocaust?
It's necessary to clarify that perfidious, in its original sense, it had not the same meaning than now. Perfides, who abandon, who did not reach the true faith.
Because some people have translated that word as treacherous, haven't they?
Yeah. But no doubt with the passing of the centuries, this word assumed a very negative aspect.
Should Christians still seek to convert Jews?
No.
This is nothing short of a 180-degree turn for a church that used to treat Jews as distinctly second-rate members of the Abrahamic family. But in Catholicism, nothing is ever as straightforward as it seems. I approach church texts like I do insurance policies. It's always best to check the small print. Just 2 months after John Paul's visit, the Pope ratified a Vatican document called Dominus Jesus. And tucked away at the end was a reference to other world religions. They were described as being gravely deficient.
Isn't it better to leave words like this out, gravely deficient, in the interest of keeping the peace?
This document is not a document addressed to other religions. It's addressed to what a Catholic should believe to be faithful to his own faith.
But other religions read these documents, don't they?
They read this document mainly as it was addressed also to other religions. But if you take the documents of other religions to their faithful, you will see that there is a similar language.
Sure. How can we as Christians make sense of Islam? If Jesus is the final word of salvation, how has God allowed a situation whereby a quarter of the planet follow this other faith?
I am not God, so I cannot give you...
That's the first time I've heard an archbishop say that.
I am not God, and I cannot give you an answer in his name.
Maybe not, but it didn't mean the question wasn't worth pursuing. It was time to head off to a desert monastery to explore the next part of the triangle, Christianity and Islam. I'm off to the Dead Sea Desert to try and settle a little conundrum. As a Christian, I believe that the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus and the early church he established in this region fulfill the prophecies of the coming of a Messiah in the books of the Old Testament. In the New Testament, Jesus is portrayed as the clinching word on all matters concerning salvation. No one can come to the Father except through me, says St. John's Gospel. There was just one problem vexing me as I negotiated the tricky desert terrain. If God's revelation in Jesus is the last word, how does one explain the emergence of Islam in this part of the world, some 600 years after his death? The Greek Orthodox monastery of Mar Saba was founded in the late 5th century. One of its best-known monks was St. John of Damascus. He was born after the death of Muhammad and wrote extensively about the new religion which had swept the region before he was finally laid to rest.
Did he think it was a completely new religion, or did he think it was like a heresy of Christianity?
I think that he believed that it was a new religion with elements from Judaism and Christianity. And the important thing in this aspect, for him was that he remained a citizen of the new Islam state, but at the same time he remained a Christian.
John of Damascus was living proof of how a Christian subject could coexist peacefully under the new Islamic authority of the 7th century. But what did Archbishop Aristarchus make of my main conundrum?
If you're God and you've sent your only Son into the world as a definitive act of salvation, how do you explain that like a quarter of the planet now have this other religion? It's very difficult to understand why God would let that happen, isn't it?
Because I think, as St. John of Damascus says,
it's a difficult question, isn't it?
God has created us after.
What does that mean?
It means that we have entirely absolute freedom. And so we are free to choose.
And sometimes we don't choose correctly.
Sometimes we choose correctly, sometimes no, and sometimes we choose according to our own possibilities. Place of birth, education, and so on.
Is the Quran a holy book for you as a Greek Orthodox bishop?
The Quran is a holy book for the Muslims.
But not for you?
Now, for me as a Christian, I said that I respect the freedom of the Muslims to accept it so.
What about Muhammad? I mean, is Muhammad a prophet?
For me as a Christian, Christ is the prophet, the last prophet, and Christ is the Son of God and the delegate of God, and he is God.
Is there a tension between speaking the truth and being tolerant and being seen to be kind to other faiths, but also speaking from one's own heart?
I think that if we love God and if we love the others, no matter to which religion they belong, and if we love them as God loves them, then we tolerate them, and we pray for them, and we pray for them to be guided to the whole truth.
Which, however diplomatically he put it, the bishop still believed resided in his own Orthodox tradition. But 50 years ago, his forebears would have been talking hellfire and damnation. So it was time to press on and test this new mood of tolerance in the most bitterly polarized city in the Middle East. Welcome to Hebron. The Arabic name for Hebron is El Khalil, the friend, the name given to Abraham by God in the Quran. 700 Jewish settlers live here in the midst of 100,000 Palestinians. Most of them have taken up residence since the 1967 war. They're among the hardest of the hardliners. The city is split into zones. Citing security needs, the military often enforce curfews on the Arab population. The legacy of bloodshed goes back a long way. Jews recall riots in 1929, which led to dozens of their community being massacred. Extremist groups have also recruited heavily from the Palestinian population. And in the heart of all this, in one of history's most savage ironies, stands the tomb of the patriarchs, where Abraham lies buried.
This is the first entrance of the tomb. This is the Muslim side, which leads into a mosque. And just 200 yards around the corner, the entrance to the Jewish side and their synagogue. So Abraham lies buried here beneath his squabbling descendants. And if you strain your ear enough, you just might hear the sound of somebody turning in their grave.
I was keen to explore inside, so I enlisted the help of the leader of Hebron's settler community, Noam Arnon.
This is Abraham, the monument of Abraham.
Abraham's not actually in there, is he? No.
This is the monument, the memorial. Abraham is actually buried very deep beneath.
It's an extraordinary thing, isn't it, being here in this divided structure, because just through the other side we can see Muslims at prayer, and yet God said in the Torah, I will make you the father of all the nations. Does that make you feel sad that we're so near to those people and yet there's no contact? It's quite telling.
Well, That's the problem. That's the problem, that we, people on earth, that want to implement the heritage of Abraham and the ideas of Abraham, somehow misled and somehow misbehave.
Because it would be wrong, wouldn't it, to people to think that Jew and Muslim have always been in a tense relationship. There were long periods of time where, even in this place, Jew and Muslim would pray side by side peacefully.
That's right. In this place, in this specific place.
It's interesting, it's almost poetic, isn't it, that you're here, they're there, but the actually thing that connects you is Abraham.
We look from all the sides.
But it is the connection, it's him.
This is the connection.
I had to keep reminding myself that this conversation was taking place in a building which for hundreds of years had been a fully dedicated Islamic mosque. When Israel had moved into Hebron, one of the fruits of occupation for local Jews had been to secure an area for themselves as a synagogue. Next stop on our tour was to examine the Holy Scrolls of the Torah. These are the books of Moses and contain many of the key precepts of Jewish law.
We have here the scrolls of the Bible, which are right here according to Jewish tradition.
Okay.
The main thing in a synagogue is the place of the scrolls of the Bible. This is the first 5 books. It's called in Hebrew the Torat Moshe, the books of Moses. Moses himself wrote it. Not this specific one, but he wrote the first copy of the Torah, of the 5 books.
One of the most oft-repeated commands given to the Israelites after they were freed from captivity was to be constantly mindful of people not like themselves. You shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the heart of the stranger, since you were strangers in the land of Egypt.
You always say you should remember that you were a slave in Egypt, that you were a stranger in Egypt, and you have to make sure that amongst you, the stranger has a good life. I think somehow even the Torah, the Bible, gave us the first idea of human rights in the world.
In Hebron, it's questionable whether those commands to embrace the stranger have always been observed by those who read the Torah. Baruch Marzel was a member of an outlawed extremist group that has been accused of violence against a number of Palestinians, including an elderly couple who live close to him in the Jewish quarter. Like many Jews in Hebron, he's deeply suspicious of foreign journalists like me. It was far from easy, but finally, I did manage to get him in front of the camera.
There's no hope for the 2 different religions, and they'll try to kill us anytime they can.
You're no angel yourself, are you, in a sense? I mean, you have a track record for, in this community, being occasionally quite violent with some of your Palestinian neighbors.
Listen, self-defense. If someone wants to come to kill me, I'll kill him first. If this is violence, I'm a violent person, but...
But was it true that Israeli soldiers informed on you for attacking a Palestinian toddler, for instance, some years ago?
Maybe he threw rocks. If he threw rocks, I will attack him.
What did you do to him?
I don't remember the incident, but there's no doubt that I'm ready to defend myself. Never again. We're not going to the gas chambers again, willingly.
I'd been waiting weeks for my chance to talk to Baruch Marzel, but in Hebron, nothing runs smoothly. As we came under the eagle eye of Baruch's friends, I wondered whether word had got around about our little encounter. They finally moved on, and we got back to the Torah.
Even more than observing the Sabbath, the single most ethical demand that God makes of the Jewish people is, oppress ye not the stranger, for ye yourselves were once strangers in the land of Egypt. And yet we have thousands of people here living under curfew on your very doorstep.
No one, even reading selectivity,
It's more than 36 times it says it. 36 times the first 5 books.
I'm ready to sit with you and each time and show you that's not what the Torah means.
Exodus,
the Torah says
Leviticus,
that,
Deuteronomy,
yeah, well,
time and again.
You want to read the Torah this way? I will say that the same Torah says, if someone take your eyes out, you have to take his eyes out back.
With sentiments like these, it's hardly surprising that religious belief attracts critical comment. But there's not much sign of give on the other side either. Friday prayer, and Muslims gather to hear Sheikh Fawzi, one of Hebron's most vocal imams.
I pray for and I praise the inhabitants of this glorious city, which was initially the dwelling place of our father Abraham. Praise be upon him, his family, his children, and those who followed and continue to follow and glorify him, from now until the end of time.
Palestinians understandably oppose occupation by the Israeli army in Hebron, but I wondered what Sheikh Fawzi made of the Jews' religious rights to practice their faith at a site so holy to them.
Do you accept that the Jews actually have a right to worship down there at the tomb of Abraham, as well as Muslims?
لا أوافق على هذا ولو وافقت فإنني
I do not agree to this, and if I did agree to this according to religious law, I would be sinning. I would not be happy if one of Allah's houses, a mosque, was split into 2 sections or more. The Haram of Abraham is strictly an Islamic mosque, and it is not allowed for non-Muslims to come and worship in it. I have no objection if Jews want to come and visit. They can come, like all the other visitors who come, as tourists to the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem.
Shalom.
Having seen the synagogue on one side of the tomb of the patriarchs, I ventured back to take a look at the other side, the mosque, which contains huge memorials to Abraham's son Isaac and Isaac's wife Rebekah. But I had more recent history on my mind, for I was walking on the very spot of one of the region's bloodiest incidents. I was treading in the footsteps of carnage. 10 years ago, during Friday prayers, a crazed settler burst into the packed mosque and opened fire with an assault rifle. The assassin killed 29 people. Taking human lives in their sacred space is seen by men of hate as the most devastating way of injuring a whole community. This particular man of hate was Dr. Baruch Goldstein. Goldstein was killed by Palestinian onlookers after he opened fire. A memorial to him attracts a constant flow of visitors of all ages. The setting down of small stones is a long-standing Jewish tradition, signaling respect for the dead. The inscription on the memorial says he gave his soul for the Torah and his country. His hands are clean, it says. He had integrity. He murdered for the holiness of God.
But isn't the story of Abraham that God doesn't want violence? I mean, he actually stops at the point where human life is to be shared. And isn't that story basically saying that it doesn't matter who is doing the violence, God does not want it?
Well, that's the most stupid, evil thing to say on God. God wants justice. And if someone comes to kill you, you have to kill him first. You don't have to give him the second cheek. This is Judaism. To say that someone that wants to kill us, that comes and kills here, right here, a rabbi, 65 years old, that never harmed a fly in his life, someone that comes to kill him, I have to make peace with this guy. Well, that's not Judaism, that's not God, that's not religion. This is anti-Semitism.
But your reading of Judaism isn't shared by thousands, millions of Jews in other parts of the world who don't live in Israel, you realize there are different interpretations of the Torah.
Well, I think that massive 90% of the people that really believe in God and observe the Torah think like me.
You wouldn't do what Baruch Goldstein did, would you? Ever? You wouldn't even contemplate it.
Well, the question depends to who. I killed a few of my enemies. They came to kill me. I killed them first. Anyone that's come to kill me, I'll kill him first.
I'd found Baruch's take on God chilling, but thankfully it wasn't my final impression of Hebron. There was still one last chance to savour Abraham's legacy, in the bizarrest of places, a circumcision ceremony. This is a religious ritual which, odd as it may seem, offers the promise of common ground between Jew and Muslim. The practice goes back to the time of Abraham, who not only made the sacrifice himself, but also repeated it with his sons Ishmael and Isaac. It was part of his covenant with God, a sign of his fidelity in return for God's promise of the future safeguarding of his descendants. Bearing in mind that this space in the synagogue had, until recently, been part of a much bigger Islamic mosque, it seemed an irony that this most distinctive of Jewish ceremonies was taking place under a host of Arabic inscriptions. The proud grandfather was none other than the community leader of Hebron's Jews, Noam Arnon.
I would say 99% of the Jews in the world do it on the same 8th day, in the same way of the traditional circumcision as it was ordered by God to Abraham. It's a unique example of preserving an heritage after so many years.
Of course, it's interesting that Jews trace their heritage back through the line to Isaac and then Abraham, but Ishmael was also circumcised.
Yes.
And many Muslims trace their line back to Ishmael. So if the fact is the case these days that most Muslims are also circumcised, does that mean they share in God's covenant as well?
Of course, they have some share in the Bible and some share in this tradition.
So what then is all the fuss about if both sides have so much in common? Why can't Hebron's Jews and their neighbours get on together? They might share rituals, traditions, and even some religious prophets with Muslims. But when it comes to the land, the sharing, it seems, comes to an abrupt halt.
Later on in the Bible, we read that Abraham was ordered by God to expel Ishmael, that he will not have the part in the land. He was sent out of the land to symbolize that we can see today, two peoples cannot live and claim one land. It only
Interruptions had been a recurring theme of my encounters in Hebron, and they'd always occurred at the most controversial moments. Coincidence or providence?
God said that everything that Sarah told you, you have to implement. You have to hear, to listen to what she says.
Despite all the interruptions, the message was clear. Jewish hardliners back Isaac over Ishmael. In their eyes, at least, the children of Abraham are far from equal. As I headed out of Hebron, I couldn't help wondering how history would have turned out if that story about Abraham's two sons had ended instead with them both living with Dad and his two wives. It'd be easy, I was thinking, to blame all this on politics and let religion off the hook. Yet there's no doubt that the central claims to this land are justified by Hebron's Jews, at least, using biblical texts. texts whose authority is not recognized by their Muslim neighbors. But I also knew it wasn't all gloom and doom. Different faith traditions had coexisted peacefully in this region for centuries. There was no intrinsic reason why one day they shouldn't do so again.
When Abraham finally died in Hebron, we're told that Ishmael returned to be alongside Isaac so that both sons could actually come together and bury their father. It's a hopeful image and one that inspired this work from a Jewish poet. Ishmael, my brother, how long shall we fight each other? My brother from times bygone, my brother, Hagar's son, my brother, the wandering one. Ishmael, my brother, hear my plea. It was the angel who tied thee to me. Time is running out. Put hatred to sleep. Shoulder to shoulder, let's water our sheep.
Next week, when my journey resumes, I come face to face with Islamic hardliners.
Is Islam going to take over the world eventually? Will it be the world religion?
By Islamic propagation or the rifle. It's going to be either way, but it's going to happen.
And tracing the battle over sacred turf.
If I'm a Muslim, can I come and pray here?
Yeah. You are Muslim?
Well, no, I'm not a Muslim.
My own personal effort to broker peace among Abraham's children in the most bitterly contested part of planet Earth. The continuing journey to the heart of three great religions and their believers, the children of Abraham. Last week, we saw how the Holy Prophet bequeathed the legacy of a blessing for all humanity. In spite of this, the curse of division still haunts his descendants.
Many years, we were praying together with Muslims.
We're so near to those people, and yet there's no contact.
On this journey, you'll meet those happy to embrace believers different from themselves.
Neither Islam, nor Christianity, nor Judaism are calling for the perishing and the killing of the others.
But even within the same faith, you'll meet others whose outlook is dogmatic and unyielding.
When Jesus Christ comes back to this world as the Messiah, there'll be no choice but Islam.
And those who would trash the holy buildings of their adversaries.
We shall take them piece by piece, put them in a big envelope and mail them back to Mecca from where they were brought.
Different religious mindsets. How do we account for them? My journey begins in the most sacred part of the Holy Land, the city of Jerusalem. I'm in the old city in Jerusalem, treading in the footsteps of Jesus on the final stages of his journey to Calvary, the place of his crucifixion. But this city isn't just important to Christians. I'm all too well aware that Jews and Muslims also deem Jerusalem to be sacred. That's why this small piece of land, just the size of 4 football pitches, is so fascinating to me.
Because if all these three faiths deem this place to be sacred, then this is both a curse and an opportunity. The potboiler atmosphere here means that each tradition knows it does not exist in a vacuum. For better or for worse, each has to deal with the others.
And dealing with the other is never simple. In this city, there are stories of both conciliation and entrenched confrontation. Let me take you on a short trip to 2 of the most highly charged spots, 2 sacred spaces, and 2 contrasting ways of handling disputes. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the most holy site in Christendom. Pilgrims kiss the spot where Jesus was laid after he was taken down from the cross. For centuries, the numerous denominations, Orthodox, Catholic, Armenian and others, had bickered with one another about the control of access to this most sacred of places. But they settled on a compromise. The man at the entrance who opens and closes the church comes from a long-established Muslim family. Muslims have been the chief gatekeepers here for centuries, and Waji Nasibi plays a vital role here in keeping conflict at bay.
Why did they allow you to have control of all the keys?
To be neutral between all the Christians groups here. You Muslims, we are giving respect for Jesus as one of the holiest prophet.
But is he the Son of God to you?
Yes, this is the difference between Christianity and Islam. You see, we believe in Islam there is one God, and God don't have family. And Jesus, Muhammad, Moses, Abraham, everybody is a prophet.
Did Jesus die on the cross, according to
See,
Islam?
for the Islam is not crucified. He was sent to heaven.
So that's a sort of false image. It didn't happen, really.
You see, this is in your opinion. Everybody having his own belief and his own way.
It's kind of strange, isn't it, that you work here, keeping the peace, and yet here you are in a situation where the very point of the Holy Sepulchre here is to celebrate the death of Jesus, but that's something that as a Muslim that you don't accept. It's an interesting point.
We accepting that he was he chosen by God, and we believe if he is the Son of God, the Father doesn't agree that his son to be crucified in his eyes.
Because God would not let that happen.
The others.
It was more than 20 years since I'd last been inside the Holy Sepulchre, and I wanted to venerate the exact spot where Jesus had died on the cross. Wuji, as a Muslim, had denied the divinity of Christ, yet he had not told me I was wrong. Everybody having his belief and his own way were his words. Christian soldiers may have slaughtered thousands of Muslims during the Crusades, yet he was Wuji, playing a symbolic role preserving peace amongst Christ's followers. Nor was he the only conciliatory Muslim voice on the premises. I'd spotted the novel site of a group of Pakistani Muslims paying homage to their prophet Jesus. And there was a question for them that would test their spirit of openness.
As a Muslim, you're allowed to go to the most important part of Christendom, but I understand that as a Christian, I'm not allowed to go to Mecca. And I just want to know why that is the case.
I don't know, because we believe in all the prophets, and Jesus is one of the prophets. So we visit all the holy places.
Right.
Even we go to the other parts of the Jewish holy places.
I mean, do you think it would be a good idea if I could go to Mecca?
Yes, it's maybe it's for the political barriers you could not go. At the time when the Prophet bring Islam, everyone was not Muslim at that time. So they were
So if there was a change, do you think it would be a good idea to allow Christians to go to Mecca and Jews as well, perhaps?
Yes, they could.
Well, thank you very much. Perhaps the world will change.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Unorthodox, maybe, but Jerusalem seemed to be brimming with a spirit of harmony. The peaceful resolution of faction fighting in the Holy Sepulchre suggested to me that other disputes might be solved in a similar way, an idea I was about to try out on one of the most powerful men in Jerusalem. Religious battles over sacred sites don't come any tougher than this one. To Muslims, this is Al-Aqsa, the holy site where the Prophet Muhammad arrived from Mecca and then made a dramatic night journey to heaven. To Jews, the selfsame spot beyond the Wailing Wall is the Temple Mount, where Abraham was asked to sacrifice Isaac and where King Solomon and Herod had fashioned their holy temples. This is arguably the most bitterly contested piece of land on planet Earth. My earlier visit to the Holy Sepulchre had given me an idea. If the Christians had solved their squabbles by handing over the keys to the Muslims, surely they and the Jews could end their standoff by handing over power to the Christians. I felt my nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize looming on the horizon. So I popped along to hatch my plan to the #1 Muslim, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. Are you familiar with the story of the Nusayb family, the family that controlled the keys and the administration of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and have kept the peace amongst the Christians for many centuries?
Yes, it is a Christian church, but the Christians consist of numerous sects who were in conflict with one another. So they saw it was better to give the key to the Muslims.
Muslims believe this area, the Al-Aqsa area, is their holy land. And of course the Jews have the Western Wall. I've got an idea. Wouldn't it be a good idea to give control just to the Christians? Then you'd have the same peaceful solution as you have in the Holy Sepulchre, which would be a marvelous solution and no one would have to worry. No? I think I found peace here. I think this is a peaceful solution.
When the Muslims received the key, the church remained in the control of the Christians. The important thing is that Al-Aqsa stays with the Muslims, and this decision is from God. In the case of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, it was the Christians who asked the Muslims to take it. We didn't ask them to give us the key. We have no need to give the key to Christians or Jews. Al-Aqsa is for us, because Allah made that decision.
My career as an interfaith peacemaker had lasted all of 30 minutes. But that didn't stop me from wanting to get my own first-hand glimpse of this hotly disputed piece of turf. So I made my way forward to the threshold.
Am I allowed to go up here to look? No? Why not?
No, not just. Are you not Muslim?
If I'm a Muslim, can I come and pray here?
Yes. You are Muslim?
Well, no, I'm not a Muslim. So Jews and Christians can't come here?
No.
Stopped by Israeli officials who've been very nervous of letting any non-Muslims on here since the latest Palestinian uprising began 4 years ago. And I wasn't the only non-Muslim trying to cross the Rubicon. Just a few yards down below, a group of Jewish hardliners gather for an attempt to storm onto the Temple Mount. They carry with them the model of the temple from ancient times. Their goal? To penetrate what is presently Muslim-controlled Holy Land. Supporting them are a growing lobby of Christian Zionists from North America, whose presence here is tinged with more than a little self-interest.
This is the place of hope. This is the place, the only place, from which peace will come to all the world. Here at the holiest place of the Jews, but also holy to every true believer, as all the nations one day will come here and worship the Lord God of Israel. This is the place of hope.
They cleave to an article of faith in the New Testament book of Revelation, which mentions the re-establishment of the temple as a precursor to the second coming of Christ, when all, Jews included, will honor Jesus as the true Messiah. These Jews don't agree with that, of course, but they are glad of the support.
If you did succeed in building the third temple up there, what would happen to the existing Muslim buildings which are there at the moment?
The existence of the Muslims and the buildings is a result of imperialistic occupation. Our goal and our mission is to finish the Arab occupation of Temple Mount, Jerusalem, and any other place in the land of Israel.
But there's plenty of space up there. Couldn't you actually, couldn't you share it? No?
We cannot share, because the Temple Mount was dedicated by God to be only the place of the temple. And the temple will be a house of prayer for all nations, including the Arabs and the Muslims.
But then you'd have to destroy their mosque, wouldn't you?
We shall not destroy, we shall take them piece by piece, put them in a big envelope and mail them back to Mecca from where they were brought.
Is this really about religion as such? Against the backdrop of the political struggle, these sites have become prize assets, almost like football trophies. a canvas on which religion and politics have become impossible to separate. To control access to the sacred is to wield immense political power. The intransigence of all these religious men was beginning to do my head in. If God had blessed all the tribes of the earth through Abraham, why was it that some of his children used God to reach out, and yet others used God to demonize and exclude? I was about to meet a man who was similarly vexed by these questions, and who would pay the penalty for trying to answer them.
Finding God reaching out to us, they discovered the importance of human beings reaching out to one another.
Jonathan Sacks wrote a groundbreaking book which both pleaded for tolerance and celebrated the diversity among the children of Abraham.
Listen to this. They said when a human being makes many coins in the same mint, they all come out the same. God makes all of us in the same mint, his image, and we all come out different.
The chief rabbi believes that God sees the different traditions like parents might view their numerous children, varied, yet blessed in their different ways. This message went down well with some Christians and Muslims, but within his own camp, the book created a storm. A number of critics thought he was selling the Jewish faith down the river. Traditionalists took out ads against him and accused him of writing a book which was a grave deviation from authentic Judaism.
The reaction to the book was extraordinary, wasn't it? I mean, there you had people taking out adverts against you in the Jewish Chronicle, saying that the book was inconsistent with the teachings of Judaism.
Any complex message that addresses divides between faiths will be read one way by people of your faith, another way by people of different faiths. So I paraphrased those passages that people found difficult, said the same thing in rather more literal language and slightly more restrained language, and the argument simply disappeared.
But so did an important part of the text. Sacks agreed to withdraw his book and replace it with a second edition, and one of the key casualties was a simple sentence: no one creed has a monopoly on spiritual truth.
I think you're downplaying the importance of this. I think that, anyone who has a religious court sitting in session, going through this text line by line, shows that you're in pretty serious trouble.
Historically, the people who've really suffered have been the politicians, not the religious leaders so much. The great peacemakers, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Sadat, Yitzhak Rabin, were assassinated. So if one occasionally has a little wave of internal criticism, that's okay.
But what of that crucial difference between the inclusive religious liberal and the closed mind of the fundamentalist? Sacks says it boils down to a key factor in our psychological makeup: insecurity.
Well, I define fundamentalism as the attempt to impose a single truth on a plural world. And what really lies behind it is fear, a profound insecurity that makes you feel when you meet somebody who's not like you or doesn't agree with you, that challenges and threatens your very being. Aggression is always a sign of insecurity. And insecurity is always, at bottom, a lack of faith, not the presence of it.
Profound words indeed, and ones that would stand me in good stead for the next stage of my journey. For I was about to come across one of the most extraordinary human beings I'd ever encountered, a religious convert with true fire in his soul. This is Brooklyn-born Joseph Cohen. 5 years ago, Joseph left his Jewish family in the USA to set up home with his wife in a settlement near the occupied Gaza Strip. Joseph was a fervent and regular visitor to the Wailing Wall and has conceded in interviews that he would, quote, come most days and knock my head against the wall. One night, Joseph was checking out a religious website. His life was about to change forever.
I was in a chat room, and a man came in, and many of the quote-unquote Israelis were finding him offensive. But the truth is, he was speaking the haqq. He was saying truth, And I spoke to this guy the whole night, and I couldn't sidetrack him. You know, as a Jew, you learn to try to be cunning and how to push the people in your direction. I couldn't push this guy anywhere. He was hard as a rock.
Is there one overarching idea in Islam that really appealed to you, that actually sealed your conversion?
The central idea would be that one perfect God that is flawless, and one deen, one religion, a perfect religion for all mankind, not just a special board of directors or their own country club, for everyone.
He moved to live in Palestinian East Jerusalem, the start of a dramatic transformation. Joseph became Yusuf el-Khattab. His wife and 4 children all changed their names and their faith. His Jewish family back in the States were not exactly bowled over.
What are your present state of relations with the family?
Talaq, broken.
Does that sadden you?
Well, Islam forbids me to lie. I'll be honest with you. You might say I'm cold, but actually, no. I grew up like a lock and key child, so it's not like a close-knit family. And I basically tended for myself.
Jewish families, Jewish culture, Brooklyn, you only get one set of parents.
It's true, but we were never extremely close. I was basically taking care of myself. My mother worked, my father was gone during the day. And we weren't that close from the beginning.
What do you have in faith now that you didn't have before as a Jew?
I have true belief.
Why should I take anything you say seriously? I mean, you converted to a new faith on the internet. Who's to say that in 2 years' time you won't be a Roman Catholic like me and we'll both be going off to the Vatican to see the Pope?
We should go to the Vatican. I have a duty to go there to give a message of Islam to the Pope too. But you have to understand something.
What would happen to you if you renounced your
I would
Islamic
be killed.
faith?
And this is one of the miracles of Islam.
Why should you be killed?
Why? Because it's clear in the Quran. There's no belief after disbelief. You can't go in and out. And every Muslim is warned this before they take Shahada.
Is this when people say sometimes the only way out of Islam is
death? That's the fact. But still, this is the miracle. It's still the fastest growing religion. Knowing this, people still accept it. Christians, Jews are still accepting Islam.
I'm not surprised it's the fastest growing religion in the world when the penalty for leaving Islam is death.
Renouncing the message of Islam, the sin of apostasy, is certainly a serious business, but many moderate Muslims would balk at Yusuf's views on the death sentence. Their view is that faith is a matter of personal assent, and point to one of the Quran's most celebrated texts to make their point. Surah 2, verse 256, there is no compulsion in religion. Still, Yusuf's take on apostasy was the first inkling to me that his understanding of Islam was not exactly of the cuddly variety. Yusuf made it clear that he's not a spokesman for his local mosque, but further conversations revealed that his views were very similar to those of a so-called Wahhabi, the kind of hardline political Islamist that one has come to associate with Saudi Arabia. Just before I'd met Yusuf came chilling news. A cafe bombing in Haifa had killed 22 people, a number of whom were Arab Israelis. In the aftermath, it emerged that the bomber had been a young woman from the West Bank town of Jenin, and it made me wonder what Yusuf would make of it.
I'm very proud of my sister, what she did last week. And inshallah, we have thousands more that are willing to do the same.
Your sister was the suicide bomber?
My sister in Islam, my sister in faith. And this is the biggest sacrifice that she gave.
I mean, I've studied the Quran, I've looked at the Hadith, the sayings of Muhammad, and it seems pretty clear to me that women and children are declared as innocents. Isn't restraint more important?
Who has more restraint than the Palestinians? I mean, it's almost a joke that somebody like the Jews or the Christians can come to us here and tell the Muslims that you have to have restraint after being beat up by guard points, after having me called filthy words in front of my kids, after being beat up, after being taken out of my house in the middle of the night in front of my kids, and they tell me to have restraint.
Yusuf is blessed with 4 well-behaved and talented kids. I raised again the subject of the Haifa bombing that had resulted in the deaths of several young children. Surely, as a father, that would induce some serious second thoughts. But his answer was the most chilling yet.
This is really the best blessing for them, because a child that dies before 10 years old goes to Jannah. They're in paradise.
It's a blessing to get killed on a bus?
Allah guides who He wants to Islam.
It says very clearly in the Quran that if a Muslim kills another Muslim, that he will not see God and that in fact he will be condemned to eternal, well, hellfire. Surely that puts him in a very difficult position in terms of justifying what he's done.
That's true, but it's intention. Nobody has the intention to go out and kill Muslims. And that Muslim is a
Just use
shaheed.
your common sense. Who's going to be on that bus?
No. And the common sense is it's going to be mostly Jews. That's common sense. Common sense to any Muslim here is that we don't go on buses. We don't go on egged buses, except the few that do, the exception.
Do you believe in the concept of the innocent civilian in the state of Israel?
Absolutely not. There is no innocent civilian. Every one of them goes in the army. Every one of them votes for a government that oppresses. So there is no compromise. We have nothing to offer them. What can we give them?
Both he and I claim belief in God, yet it seemed we were living on different theological planets. An hour's drive northwest of Jerusalem lies a controversial new security structure. It's more than 20 feet high and will eventually span hundreds of miles. Depending on your viewpoint, it's either a fence or a wall. Israel says it's needed to block out the suicide bombers whose actions are championed by Yusuf. Palestinians say it will cut off and destroy communities which have been here for centuries.
It's a fact perhaps known to a few, but the word religion comes from the Latin verb religare, which means to bind or to bring together. Now, it doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on, so to speak, when it comes to Israel's security needs. This place says it all.
If religion is about binding, then these two teachers, Hassan, a Palestinian Muslim, and Adina, who's Jewish, are certainly attempting to make sure that that security fence does not have the final word. Some years back, Adina Shapira answered an ad from a Palestinian school wanting a Hebrew teacher.
I think I picked it up in a supermarket or something like that. I don't even recall. It was so much by chance. And for me, I don't think that I ever pictured a school, a Palestinian school, within any Palestinian areas or beyond the Green Line. I thought that there are Arab schools within Israel, and the Arabs that live here know Hebrew. It is about time that I go and meet someone of the other side within our country. I never even imagined that it would be so.
Which contact had you had with anyone on the other side?
None.
She was posted to a school just outside Bethlehem on the West Bank. It was called Hope Flowers. To carry out her new teaching mission, Adina had to subject herself to the daily drudgery of controls and roadblocks, the common everyday experience of her new pupils. This startling change in her life now left her Orthodox Jewish family facing some rather tricky questions from the neighbors.
Very frequently after a particularly atrocious suicide attack, so, neighbors would say, how can Adina possibly talk to these people, but when they have all that hasata, what's the incitement, in their literature and their educational literature, what business does Adina have talking to these people? And my response would always be, well, that's why she's talking to them. I mean, she is dealing with the issue of incitement.
What about Mum? I mean, how did you feel when she started this venture?
Well, we were naturally a little bit worried as she was about to go someplace that was strange, and I understood that you heard that we bought her a cell phone and we made her call the police, and generally we've been very, very proud of what she's done. And
because as a family, I mean, you're Orthodox Jews. It's not as if we could somehow paint this family as liberal, peacenik, very, very left wing.
I think we could put all of that together.
Was this decision to embrace the other something that flowed from her religious faith? Adina is swift to downplay personal piety, but talking to her, it's clear that it played a huge part in her decision.
I believe that God created man. He didn't create the Jewish man. He created man, and we're all created in the image of God, and that's everyone. And I think that that conviction is something that makes it very easy for me to then to go and approach something like this, because I had a very clear sense of who I was, and that wasn't threatened.
Adina's work has mushroomed. She set up an exchange program with her colleague Hassan Abdullah. Their joint task is to unite teachers from both sides of the divide, in the hope that such encounters will, in time, send a clear signal to their students.
Just imagine that a teacher goes to his school and he talks to her colleagues about a meeting that she had held with Israelis. And then students, it happened, and then the students in the class asked him, "What were you doing, teacher, last Friday? Were you meeting the Israelis?" "Yes, of course." "So what were you talking? Were you meeting the settlers?" "Of course, no." "So who were you meeting with?" "I was meeting teachers who were discussing your rights to exist and their rights to exist." And here comes the point, that you have to point out to the students that it's not only my right to exist, it's only the other's right to exist. Neither Islam, nor Christianity, nor Judaism are calling for the perishing and the killing of the others.
You'd think that getting 30 teachers together would be a doddle. Not a bit of it. Checkpoints, permits, and other bureaucratic obstacles make any encounter a hazardous enterprise.
There's a separation between the Israeli and Palestinian people, a physical separation between them, which is meant, at least by the Israeli government, to create, if not security, then at least a sense of security with the Israeli people.
It also means that you have these like cardboard cutout images of one another, doesn't it, in a way? I mean, it's so easy to think that if you're a Palestinian, all you ever see is soldiers at a checkpoint, and if you're an Israeli, all you ever see are pictures of bombs on TV, and that's the limit of the human contact.
Yeah. And so that's not my contact, which is very different than the average person, obviously, because we speak all the time.
But you're an exception.
But we're definitely an exception.
They've battled hours to get here, but both sides have finally made it.
To ventilate, express your feelings about what's going on around our two communities.
They know when they get back to their own communities, they'll run the risk of being labelled traitors and collaborators. But such risks are worth taking. Indeed, there's a higher law that dictates they must be taken.
If we believe in God, truly, this is the way to salvation from this political disagreements and conflict that we have.
And what does belief in God really mean in a word, in terms of your neighbour?
Implementing God's principles.
Which is?
Not to kill, not to steal, and not to deprive others' rights. Implement it, not just raise it as a slogan. We need to implement it by action, not by words.
Harping back to Rabbi Sachs's theory about insecurity, it was self-evident to me that both Hassan and Adina had been robust individuals from strong family backgrounds. Meeting people who were different had not threatened their own secure sense of identity. The Jerusalem March, an annual celebration of Israel's holiest city, and a chance for me to catch up and quiz Yusuf Khattab just a little further. I could sense his discomfort as visitors from all over the world, many of them American Christian fundamentalists, descended to declare support for the state of Israel. They're not exactly shrinking violets.
Thank you for being Israelis. It's because the prophet Zechariah said the children will be playing on the streets again that we in Canada know that he is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he loves you and we love you. God bless you.
This whole scene seemed to speak to Yusuf of the impending menace posed to Islam by the USA and Europe.
Europe. We see that they're trying to make the euro just took over, and soon they're going to have a constitution, and Europe is going to be just like America soon. It's going to be the United States of Europe, and it's going to push this way. Now Turkey. Now they're trying to push Turkey into it. You understand? Once it gets to Turkey, it's going to be the United States of the Middle East and Asia. Now, if they became Muslims, it would be fantastic. We don't care.
These views might suggest a chronic insecurity, but the perceptions are real. Perhaps he seems an isolated case, but this view is far from uncommon in political Islam, whether we in the West like it or not. On a final meeting with Yusuf, I wanted to put a couple of direct questions to him about his decision to turn his back on his family and his faith.
Is this an act of self-hatred? I mean, turning your back on the past, you have no links with parents and family anymore. People could interpret this conversion as simply a way of almost reinventing yourself.
Well, I think of it just the opposite way. We believe that every person is born into pure monotheism. Only our rabbis, our priests, our parents, or whoever it is corrupted our ideas, our school teachers. So I just returned back to the straight path after learning Judaism and being in their schools and learning their books, the filthy Judaism.
You can't. Why use that term? I mean, that's offensive, isn't it, to people?
I'm not trying to be offensive, but that's the fact.
Meeting you has confused me. I admire your devotion. I admire the energy you put into your religion, but I am repelled by some of the things about children under 10 dying and going straight to heaven. Is it not the case that you crave this kind of certainty because of the psychological difficulties of your past, your upbringing?
No, not at all. I don't hate the Jews because of, they're Jews. I'm not a white supremacist. I hate them. I hate their religion, I should say. And because of this, we have a duty as Muslims, and because we have the haqq, to fight munkar is the word in Arabic, which means evil deeds in any way, whether it's interest banking, whether it's pornography, whether it's money laundering on 47th Street Diamond District. This is our duty to enforce, and we will enforce it, whether George Bush or Tony Blair like this or not. This is our obligation to do.
I wonder what you might think of me privately as a Roman Catholic.
You know religiously what I believe. I mean, we have ahlak and adab, we have manners in Islam, but you have to know the truth of what we say.
But I'm a lost soul.
You're not lost because you're still alive.
But I've got a few years to find myself.
Who says a few years? Maybe you'll die in 30 seconds, as will I. We should all die in the state of Islam.
Is Islam going to take over the world eventually? Will it be the world religion? Is this inevitable?
Inshallah, we're hoping so.
But do you believe that will happen?
Eventually that will be. There will be no choice in the end.
How will that happen?
By dawah, by, how do you say? By Islamic propagation or the rifle. It's going to be either way, but it's going to happen.
You sure?
100%.
I found Yusuf's views and his pathological certainty poles apart from Hassan, the Palestinian teacher, and the faith of other Muslims I knew back home. But I was far from worried that as a Christian I was doomed to certain damnation. The Quran makes a special place for God-fearing Jews and Christians, so-called people of the book, the Bible. On them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. But Yusuf had left me with other questions. What of his defense of suicide bombers? I needed a more credible authority to rule on all this. It was time to make a further journey. Cairo, home of the Al-Azhar Mosque, one of the highest-ranking seats of Islamic scholarship. It's said that no student is admitted to the university here unless they can demonstrate complete mastery of the Quran. The word Quran means recital, harping back to the process by which the angel Gabriel communicated the 114 surahs, or chapters of Islam's holy book, to the Prophet Muhammad. I was curious to know whether the students here really knew these sacred verses by rote.
Do you speak English?
Little.
All right, because I have here Surah 14, which is called Ibrahim. Al-Isra, the night's journey, very famous.
سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى.
Okay, stop there. Is there anybody who can continue from that point?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وقضينا إلى بني إسرائيل في الكتاب لتفسدن في الأرض مرتين ولتعلن علوا كبيرا.
Okay, stop there. How old were you when you learnt the Quran like this?
6 years old.
6 years old.
This memorizing is impressive, but recollection is one thing, determining how different religious mindsets interpret words and apply them to the modern world is another. Religious texts, of course, can be eternally pliable. I think it was Shakespeare who said that the devil can cite scripture for his own purpose. So the question that we have in the West for Islam, and in particular for the Quran, is what does this text say about relations with other religions, and what does it say about the use of violence? I wanted to quiz the wisest gurus. There was none better than one of Al-Azhar's most established figures, Sheikh Mahmud Ashur. In front of a captive audience, I began by asking him how Islam regarded Jews and Christians.
As long as they treat you well and nicely and they don't attack you nor destroy your property or kill any of you, one should treat them kindly. That means you should treat them justly and impartially, as the Quran commands us to do. As long as these stand true to you, stand ye true to them.
That seemed clear enough. But what of the suicide bombers like the one in Haifa, whose actions might endanger women, children, and other non-combatants? Now came an answer I was not expecting.
The Palestinian cannot find anything to defend himself with, only his life. He is confronted by a heavily equipped arsenal of weapons, and he has nothing at all. He who offers himself to confront the enemy who has usurped his land, his honor, and destroyed his home is undoubtedly considered among the best of all martyrs.
It appeared a green light to Hamas and Islamic Jihad to continue their campaign, whatever the casualties. Was this really Islamic orthodoxy? Accompanied by my government minder, I was taken to the ministry responsible for administering Egypt's holy sites. Here I was able to check out the line on suicide bombings that I'd been given earlier.
Even if you have a right to self-defense, is it right to blow yourself up on a bus in Jerusalem with women and children on board because these people are still innocent?
شوف يا أخي الفاضل إن وصية سيدنا رسول الله.
Look, my honorable brother, the recommendation of our master, the messenger of Allah, is that no Muslim army should cut down trees, destroy homes, attack clergymen of other faiths, nor attack women and children. These are the ethics of Islamic war. Whoever breaches these must be held accountable. So when someone blows up a car or a bus, whatever their religion, it's rejected. We Muslims do not approve of these acts.
Two of Cairo's most senior Muslims, and two verdicts giving much food for thought. So much for religious texts and doctrines being easy to decipher and clear-cut. I kept thinking of what the minister had quoted about Prophet Muhammad's sayings about respect for the lives of children and even trees. It was time to head back and test these views with those in the firing line. Al-Quds University, just outside Jerusalem. It's home to 7,000 students. 10% of them are Christian, the remainder are Muslim. I'd come to test feelings about the recent Haifa bombing and share with the students some of the views I'd heard expressed in Cairo.
How far can you go in resistance? What as human beings, particularly human beings who are religious, mainly Muslims, but also Christian, how far can you go with resistance?
When all the doors are closed in our faces, and the people who go and bomb themselves, they have all the ways are closed in their ways. Because this maybe they go to bomb themselves. Okay, it's bad to kill ourselves, but all the ways are closed for them.
It's our choice. There's no choice to fight. There's no choice, just fight.
We will fight until, the earth will be ended. And we say that this is our country until the earth is ended.
I didn't know very much about the Quran or Islam, but I was looking at the rules of war, and I did some homework on the sayings of Muhammad. And it attributes a particular passage to Abu Bakr, the first caliph who followed Muhammad. And it basically says that under no circumstances would he permit, or do not kill women, do not kill children, the old or the infirm, people who are sick.
I want to add something about this hadith.
That's the passage,
yeah. Prophet Muhammad, when he was, they were preparing for that war to go and open those countries, he also recommended that not only lives, he did not only recommended lives, he said never cut a tree. So
he had respect for life.
Yeah, never cut a tree, never attack any Christian person who is being who worships God. Okay.
They recognized the teachings, but the sympathy for violent self-sacrifice continued.
So why he bombed himself? So you must put some points why he bombed himself. Maybe he's suffering a lot. He see his father killed or his mother. But we must fight to have the freedom. In any cases, we must fight in a policy, in everything.
We've always been taught since we were in schools that we have to distinguish between Israeli people and Jewish people. They're totally different stories, and the only conflict right here is that Israel is trying sometimes to impose some kind of politics in the area by using religion. Okay, they're using religion in a very bad way, and I believe that Jewish people are people that ought to be respected by us, and we totally respect them. Our problem is with Israeli people, it's not with Jewish people.
Neutral.
Then, right at the end of our discussion, came a contribution from a shy young woman in the corner of the classroom who had hitherto been silent.
Killing myself is the only way to the fight.
Sorry?
Killing myself or yourself, the way of the fight in the Palestinians.
Is that the only way?
Yes.
You really think that?
Yes. Because we didn't have arms, we didn't have tanks, nothing.
This encounter had cut a swathe through the neat simplicity of inclusive and excluding mindsets and their attitude to violence. A number of these educated youngsters had appeared respectful of Jewish religious rights, yet had spoken of their sympathy for the desperation of those who would take their lives, and with them, those of others. A sad day, compounded by an unexpected development only a couple of hours later. I found myself on a road just 10 minutes from Bethlehem, known as Two Martyrs Street. Israeli tanks had bulldozed a house containing 2 Palestinians, who they suspected of organizing attacks into Israel. Both men had died inside. A violence among the children of Abraham that begets ever more violence. Images which solder their way into the minds of children. Picking around the rubble, I pondered the saying of an old Jewish rabbi, "The sword only comes into the world when justice fails." And quietly, I asked that something, anything positive might emerge from this haunting testimony to human failure. For the last 2 weeks in the Holy Land, I've been on a mission to understand the true legacy of the prophet Abraham. This great iconic figure is a symbol of the unity of man before God, yet religion has often been used to justify war and division. Now I've moved on to post-9/11 America to check the pulse of a nation gripped by a growing religious fervor. The September the 11th attack has pushed some individuals over the brink.
When the police finally intercepted you, you were on your way to the mosque with guns in your car, is that right?
Yes, I was.
I'd already encountered the extremes among Jews and Muslims. Now it's the turn of a no-nonsense Christianity to come under the spotlight.
Muhammad is dead. He's a dead prophet, and Christ is a living Savior.
In particular, the faith of one born-again believer.
Are Muslims and Jews offended by the language the president uses?
I think some are offended and others are frightened.
And in a war-torn country, weary enemies resurface to nurture a promise of hope. Continuing my quest for that elusive peace among the children of Abraham. Dallas in Texas, the home state of the US President George W. Bush. It's a fun night out for the family, and also for those of us new in town. But this is the Bible Belt, a part of the world where they both play hard and pray hard.
Shall we pray? Our God and our Heavenly Father, so many times, because we are selfish, greedy, and live a highly...
Following the attack on the Twin Towers, many Americans were traumatized and had to get used to living with the new sense of vulnerability. And those perceived as outsiders were suddenly the focus of suspicion. "10 days after the attack on New York, a young Bangladeshi man reported for work at this South Dallas gas station.
There was some news on the newspaper about the September 11. So actually I was really scared that anytime anything might happen.
Around 12:15, I was working in this gas station, and then there was a customer. He walked in the store with a pointing shotgun towards me. So I thought it's maybe a robbery, since I have the robbery experience 1 month before. He rather asked me a question, "Where are you from?" So then I understood something different, not the robbery. So I told him, okay, I have more money, I'll give you all the money, even than should be. But he didn't listen to that. Rather, after asking that question, he just fired 2 times with a shotgun and hit in my face, and I was just falling on the floor. And after maybe 30 to 45 seconds, he left the store.
Miraculously, Rice Bhuyan survived. Badly wounded, he called for help and made it to the local hospital.
What kind of state are you in terms of your health now?
Right now, I'm in a better shape what I was earlier, except the right eye. I lost the vision in the right eye.
Rice was fortunate. The attacker had claimed 2 other victims. One was a Pakistani Muslim who was shot at this grocery store, and the second was a Hindu of Indian origin. In both cases, the shootings were fatal.
If there was one question you could ask this man who attacked you, what question would you want to ask him?
Well, it's a good question. I'd like to ask him only one thing, that one killing cannot stop whatever happened in the past, or a killing cannot stop the other killing, any other disaster. Because whatever happened in New York in September 11, I and the other foreigners and other religious people, they had nothing to do with that.
I wanted to put these questions to the man responsible, but that wasn't easy. He was swiftly found guilty of murder and now awaited death by lethal injection 250 miles from Dallas on Texas's notorious death row. I thought Mark Stroman would never talk, but amazingly, some weeks after seeking permission to interview him, he finally agreed to see me. On reaching death row, there's an eerie calm that chills you to the bone. In my 18 years of working as a journalist, I'd never felt as uneasy as I did now, seconds away from talking to a killer who'd been caught with guns in his car en route to the mosque.
Mr. Stroman, take your mind back to September the 11th.
One of the first things Stroman told me was that he'd had a relative who'd been at work in one of the Twin Towers.
My half-sister, Elizabeth, 107th floor. Her remains have never been recovered. And the sight of people jumping from the building, it's etched in my memory forever. I'm only human, and I acted on human instincts.
But the guys you attacked had nothing to do with the September the 11th attack,
No,
did
but
they?
they were just of the Arab descent, and they were just. I'm not the only American that acted out this way.
Well, you said that you thought you did what lots of other people wanted to do but didn't do. Do you think
sir.
what you did was actually acting on behalf of a big community of people?
Yes, because I'm from Dallas, Texas. Everybody in Dallas, I mean, everybody I knew, friends, everybody was talking about, let's get them, let's bomb them, let's attack them. We were lashing out at the Arab world. We didn't know who was at blame. We didn't care. And I mean, I speak for a lot of Americans and still speak for a lot of Americans.
But do you think the people that you shot were innocent or not?
That didn't matter to me at the time.
But now?
I try to block that out as much as I can, but I still have dreams of their faces.
Why don't you try and unblock it and just come to terms with it? I mean, those people didn't have anything to do with it. The only thing they had in common with the people who did those attacks was the fact they had brown skin.
Yes, sir.
That's not... I mean, it's a bit like me murdering you because of the fact that somebody else on the other side of the world with white skin did something I didn't like.
I understand that. Yes, sir. I understand that.
What have your inmates here said about what you did? Are you some hero, or have you got criticism? What have they said?
I got a Muslim neighbor right now, and me and him get along fine. I'm human, and we all make mistakes.
What's your Muslim neighbor in here for?
Murder. Yes.
Is he a man who prays? Is he a man of prayer?
Yes.
And how about you? Do you believe in God?
Yes, I do believe in God. And I've getting a lot closer with him.
Why is that?
Just being so close to death. You know, because I witness death every day around here. Every day, I witness it.
When the day comes and they inject you and you're going to die,
yes, sir. You've
got the blood of two innocent people on your hands. How do you feel about facing God having done that?
I'm not too sure. I have to deal with that when it shows up, but I'm trying to. You know, man has been killing man since the beginning of time, and I know I've sinned, and I can only hope for forgiveness and repent.
Can I tell you what I think about your story that strikes me,
yes, sir.
Mr. Stroman? That in doing what you did, you became like the people who acted on September the 11th. That
yes,
you killed innocent Americans.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Has that struck you as well?
Yes, it has. Every aspect of what I've done haunts me daily. Yes, sir.
I wondered what Rice would make of all this. What did he now feel about the man who'd been within a whisker of taking his life? And what influence, if any, would his religious faith have on his outlook?
He tried to kill me, but I have no anger against him. So that is the lesson I learned in my childhood, and my parents taught me. Try to forgive them. This is one of the good preaching of Islam, that I mean, forgiveness is the best policy. If you can forgive someone, it doesn't matter whatever he did to you. Though sometimes it's really tough to forgive someone because of the situations. But if you can forgive him, that is the best way.
But not all Muslims here are as forgiving. Following 9/11, there was a series of attacks on local mosques and other non-Christian places of worship. Life here is far from back to normal. And one of Dallas's best-known human rights campaigners now accuses the federal government of fostering a blanket discrimination against his fellow believers.
They have to go through special registration. They have to stand up in long lines. Why not other countries like the people that immigrate from Mexico or Latin America or Europe? Why don't they go through the same procedure as the people that come from Muslim countries?
Well, the answer to that might be because they don't have a track record of bombing America.
Well, we don't know if 9/11 was absolutely done by Muslims, quote unquote, true Muslims.
Well, they might not be true Muslims. They were Saudi Arabian nationals with a very politicized understanding of Islam.
When Timothy McVeigh bombed Oklahoma, we didn't go after each Christian and said, now we're gonna scrutinize all the Christians in America. He may represent Christianity, he may not. The people who bombed 9/11 don't represent Islam, in my opinion. So we have to be equal. We have to treat people the same way.
The fact remains that the Islamic faith is growing steadily in the US. In the long term, a lasting accommodation here can only happen if this deep mistrust is addressed. So are Christians in the Bible Belt now ready to embrace Muslims, their brothers and sisters, in the Abrahamic family? Wisecracks say you can always tell when you're in the Bible Belt because there are more churches than there are branches of Starbucks. This part of the world is renowned for its belief in the literal truth of the scriptures. Many people in these parts really do believe that God created the world in a week.
Early in the morning of Pentecost, Peter and the others had made their way to the temple.
Inside Dallas's Biblical Arts Center is a huge 250-foot painting called The Miracle of Pentecost, celebrating the coming of the Holy Spirit after Jesus' death and resurrection. With the advent of the Spirit, the apostles lost their fear and were commanded to spread the gospel to all ends of the earth. It heralded the birth of Christianity as a potentially imperialistic religion. This notion of a rampant, dominant Christianity sweeping all before it is all very well for 2,000 years ago. But of course, in the modern era, practically half the world's population either subscribe to other faiths or perhaps none at all. In the 21st century, therefore, the interesting question for the modern-day Christian is this. In parts of the world where Christianity still dominates, what should be its attitude towards other members of the Abrahamic family?
Hi, it's Kevin Harris. Start your day right with the Morning Magazine on the Word 100.7 FM.
So how would local Christians make sense of one God, but many faiths, and America's part in God's plans? What better way to check out the religious pulse than by talking to the listeners of Texas Christian Radio?
And we are pleased to welcome you from across the pond. Let me go to John on a mobile phone. Your question or comment for Mark Dowd.
Hi, Mark. How are you, sir?
I'm just doing fine. How are you?
Just fine. I truly do believe that God has a special place in time for America because it's only really in the last 100 years or so that Christianity has been able to spread across the planet.
Do you think now that the U.S. is on the verge of committing even more troops and more money to Iraq, do you think that we actually ought to be sending missionaries and trying to make that country more Christian and turn it away from its Islamic faith?
That was one of my arguments in favor of the war in the first place, is that might open up an entire part of the world that's closed to Christianity.
John, I appreciate the call. Good. Let me go to Jan on a mobile phone. Your question or comment for Mark Dowd.
Hi, Mark. I was just thinking about your questions that you were asking today. I think it's just a matter of God will use America as long as America is obedient to God. But I agree with the previous caller. Along with freedom comes the freedom to evangelize and bring Christ into other countries, and I can see God using America in that area especially because we are so open to that.
What do we do when people do not know Christ and do not believe he's the Son of God, and we are Christians? Do we keep quiet, or do we try to bring them around to our way of thinking?
All three religions have ties that go way back, and the difference is in who Jesus is.
Do you think there are three equally valid faiths, which, that you can put them all on the same kind of level or not?
Well, it depends on the person's perspective. In their perspective of who Jesus is, and, of course, whatever religion, whoever you are talking to at the point in time, their religion's going to be valid to them.
I'm going to put that question back to the guy who's opposite me at the moment. Scott, do you think these are equally valid faiths or not?
No, they're not. We shouldn't be confused about what separates these religions. It's not just that it is different to us. It's different in fact. I understand that the Christian faith could come across as an intolerant faith. And I would just ask for a little tolerance for my intolerance, because my intolerance has to do with what I believe are absolutes. Jesus Christ either was the only Son, is the only Son of God, or he is not. It is the Christian faith that is not about a religion, but about a relationship. And Muhammad is dead. He's a dead prophet. And Christ is a living Savior. Buddha is dead. Prophets are dead. That is the difference that Jan was talking about.
4:45, let's take a look at the weather on the Word. 100.7 FM, partly cloudy tonight, about a 20% chance.
If the spirit of political correctness has taken grip of much of the Western world, it certainly seemed to have eluded this small corner of Texas. But my host hadn't quite finished.
What is the relationship between God and the United States of America? Is there some divine plan that God has to bring truth and justice to the world, particularly through this nation?
There is a sense that we are sort of a modern era chosen people. If freedom is going to be brought, it will be brought by the United States of America. Good afternoon, this is Scott Wilder. Glad you're here. 1-800-949-5973.
There was a muscular certainty here that left me unnerved, an encounter indeed which had taken place in George Bush's own backyard. The president is a self-confessed born-again Christian. Does he see the world in these terms? President Bush and his advisors have been constantly aware of a trap. Al-Qaeda wants to present America as engaged in a religious crusade against the whole of Islam. That explains why, post 9/11, Bush praised the vast majority of the Ummah, the Muslim community, who recoil from acts of terrorism.
The face of terror is not the true faith of Islam. That's not what Islam is all about. Islam is peace. These terrorists don't represent peace. They represent evil and war.
Bush's personal faith is deep-rooted and practical. He's prioritized the giving of money to charitable groups, and I've no reason to doubt his comments about Islam and other faiths aren't sincere. But that doesn't mean the religious outlook of the most powerful man in the world leaves me free from concerns. Far from it.
I've been doing some homework of my own on the former governor of Texas, and the story begins right behind me at this church in Austin.
Bush had just won his second term as governor of Texas and came here for a Thanksgiving service. He sat attentively in the front pews, enthralled by a story from the Bible that had captured his imagination. The preacher from the United Methodist Church was an old friend, Mark Craig, whose sermons he had admired for a number of years.
The minister used his sermon to tell the congregation that America was starved of honest leaders. He invoked the story of Moses, who, when asked by God to lead the Israelites out to the Promised Land, had pleaded that he wasn't up to the task and had tried to duck out. Listening to this story, Bush drew parallels between Moses' dilemma and his own uncertainty about whether to run for the White House or not. That sermon spoke directly to my heart and to my life, he says here in his autobiography. He was speaking to you.
my mother said to me later. And the pastor had prodded me out of my comfortable life as governor and towards a national campaign. Bush, conscious of a new leadership vocation, now moved from his governor's mansion to bigger things. After the most controversial election in US history, he was installed in the Oval Office. Within 9 months of occupying it, he was engulfed in a crisis that would only deepen his sense of religious calling.
Prior to September 11th, he had a sense of God working through him, and his faith gave him confidence in God's purpose. There's now a much greater clarity and resolution about what that purpose is. He understands himself as involved in a global struggle on behalf of all that is good, decent, and divine against that which is evil.
And our prayer tonight is that God will see us through.
Bruce Lincoln has made a detailed study of the war of words between Al-Qaeda and the US president. He's examined all Bush's speeches for their specifically religious content. The first one he drew my attention to was some of the arcane language Bush used to conclude his inauguration speech.
This work continues. The story goes on. And an angel still rides in the whirlwind and directs this storm.
So, an angel rides in the whirlwind. What's all this about? That's an extraordinary thing to put into a speech, isn't it?
He quotes a letter that was sent to Thomas Jefferson 2 weeks after the signing of the Declaration of Independence by a Virginia legislator named John Page. And Page quotes from the book of Ecclesiastes to assert that there is religious guidance, a divine hand guiding the nation.
Is this the passage which, above all, one associates with this concept of election or manifest destiny?
Yes, he's asserting that it's a divinely chosen, divinely favored nation, and a nation that is the elect instrument of divine purpose. We walk with the confidence of those...
The next passage to come under scrutiny was Bush's State of the Union address from just over a year ago.
This call of history has come to the right country.
The liberty we prize is not America's gift to the world. It is God's gift to humanity.
Advancing the cause of freedom is not simply an American initiative. It is God's gift. It is God's will. His assertion that this has come to the right nation at the right time is also intriguing. Apropos of the invasion of Iraq, one has to ask, why were so few other nations interested in pursuing this venture? And he transforms that from a negative into a positive. They were not the right nations. They were not the chosen nation. They did not understand God's purpose. And the lack of support from most of the EU becomes an indictment of them on religious grounds that they did not understand God's will in the same way that America, his chosen nation, did.
This is still only one person's view. Moreover, Bruce Lincoln is a non-believer. Perhaps he's just had it with religion, full stop. On the other hand, there was a real danger that this believer, if he was exposed to any more religious zeal, might just begin to see the attractions of atheism. I wanted a second opinion on George Bush and God. And what better place than the Interfaith Alliance? This Washington-based outfit promotes interfaith dialogue and is run by a man from Louisiana with impeccable Bible Belt credentials, the Reverend Welton Gaddy. There'd been a steady stream of articles, it seemed, examining Bush's faith. There was a Roman Catholic, this particular depiction of the Sacred Heart seemed a little OTT. So what did he make of the president?
Anytime that you see a shotgun wedding between religion and politics, bad things happen. Illegitimate children are born. And that's what I worry about. Proud that he is an evangelical Christian? Yes. But if you move to the view that as a person of faith, I am called not just to be president, but to be a religious leader and to bring this nation and the world to the religious point where God expects us to be, that opens the door for a kind of religious empiricism that scares me to death.
When an evangelical Christian confesses to being scared to death of Bush's religious outlook, you know you're really onto something. There was still one final piece of the jigsaw I wanted to unravel. My attention had been drawn to the content of another Bush speech, the one made on the anniversary of September the 11th. And arguably, this one was the most serious of them all.
This ideal of America is the hope of all mankind. That hope drew millions to this harbor. That hope still lights our way. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness will not overcome it.
That reference to America as the light that darkness will not overpower is a direct quote from St. John's Gospel that refers to Christ as the true light that darkness cannot comprehend. The president appears to rank America alongside Jesus as one brought into the world to bring God's plans to fulfillment. Now, love of country is one thing, but to suggest that a sovereign nation state with political priorities and also military budgets somehow has a divine status is, in my opinion at least, about as near as you come to idolatry.
We were back to square one. It was the young Abraham who'd fought against his father and the local ruler, who'd worshipped idols in place of the one true God. Now, 4,000 years on this evidence at least, it appears that instead of man serving God, it's the other way round. Much has been made of the affinity of the US and UK leaders, and of course Tony Blair is a devoted Christian himself. But I wonder if the fact that Bush appeared to overstep the mark is what explained his allies' nervousness when tackled on this most sensitive of matters.
Does the fact that George Bush and you are both Christians make it easier for you to view these conflicts in terms of good and evil?
I don't think so, no. I think that whether you're a Christian or not a Christian, you can try and perceive what is good and what is evil.
You don't pray together, for example?
No, we don't pray together, Jeremy, no.
Why do you smile?
Because, why do you ask me the question?
Because I'm trying to find out how you feel about it.
Yeah,
I mean...
Possibly.
Right, anyone else like to have a question?
Tellingly, we're told that on the eve of going to war in Iraq, Blair had planned to sign off his TV broadcast to the nation with the words, "God bless you." His advisors intervened. The G word disappeared. Blair has said he will ultimately be judged by God for his decisions over Iraq. Whatever the rights and wrongs of the war, what neither he nor President Bush can dispute is that this conflict has allowed Islamic radicals to cast a US-led intervention in dramatically polarized terms. That Christian America and its British ally have their soldiers on Muslim soil is the rallying cry for the hundreds of attacks in Baghdad and beyond. The lessons of war and how to build peace among Abraham's children are goals that remain elusive. Locals call this city the European Jerusalem. In the 1990s in this region, more than 200,000 people lost their lives. The children of Abraham are still exhausted by carnage and a legacy of feuding. This is Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia, and this is probably the best known market in the world, for all the wrong reasons. A mortar attack on Markali Green Market in 1994, an image engraved on the modern mind, graphic proof of the murderous failure of neighbor to live alongside neighbor. Christians who belong to the Serbian Orthodox Church and Muslims are now trying to rebuild their lives. It's only 9 years since the peace deal was imposed on Bosnia, but the smell of rancor is never far away.
Do you think the Serbian Orthodox Church did enough during the hostilities to intervene and to tell the world?
This is, I think, one of the biggest problems for us, because once I was appealing to the Orthodox Church, please help me to help you, saying that come out and say that the destruction of the mosque was wrong, and come and help us morally, if not financially. But they didn't want to do so.
That's not true. He should raise this with the politicians, because that was their business. He asked nothing of us, and he is slandering the Orthodox Church. I tell you, it's simply not true. And it's not just their mosques that have been destroyed. I have plenty of churches that have been demolished, and so far, I haven't received a single penny to rebuild them.
There are, though, signs of a battered community continuing to build a fragile peace. Just 10 miles from the border with Serbia is the town of Bijeljina. This community was one of the first to be targeted when the Serbs began their campaign. Muslims here recall the night in 1993 when their mosque was razed completely to the ground.
That night at 3 a.m., the destruction got underway. We couldn't understand at the beginning what was going on, but suddenly, the bricks and roof began to fall on my brother's house, and we realized that it was our mosque that was collapsing.
All 6 mosques in this town were obliterated, but work is now underway to restore them. You'd think, given recent history, that Serbs would be, at best, lukewarm about the rebuilding, but the local imam tells a different story.
A Serbian lady approached me in front of this very mosque and asked me what was being built. I explained, and she suddenly started to cry. She said she was one of the many who had cried on that night in March 1993 because, and I'm quoting her very own words, Atik Mosque was the symbol of Bijeljina, not only for Muslims, but for all the people who truly love this town.
The decision to go ahead and rebuild had a strange twist that would further test relations between the two sides. Initial preparations on the site had unearthed the discovery of the remains of gravestones from a 14th century Orthodox church, which had disappeared from trace after the Ottoman occupation. The find meant that some Serbs now wanted the new mosque stopped in its tracks.
We knew there had been a church here, but we didn't know about the stones under the grounds of the mosque. We cannot understand why some people in the West say that this is nothing. Maybe if someone built a mosque or a place of worship on your grandfather's grave, you'd care about it. It's not civilized.
The most precious of the stones are now housed in the local museum, barely 100 meters from the mosque. After their discovery, the building works were put on hold, while a special commission was appointed to decide the mosque's fate.
And what did they decide in the end?
They agreed about the authenticity of the monuments. They agreed that they are old Orthodox Serbian inscriptions of Serbian Orthodox Church. But the conclusion was there is no, obstacles for the rebuilding of the mosque.
It's quite an irony, isn't it, that after the recent conflict, that there are the Muslims wanting to build a new house to God, and because of that, you've now found all these treasures, which you'd never have found without them.
That's right. I mean, there could be some poetic justice or something, but...
Do you think somebody up there is trying to say something?
Well, I wouldn't go that far, that's a political question, but maybe, who knows.
This is a story in which both sides emerge with something. Since the war, local Serbs have had a new church built. It's sited within a stone's throw of the steadily emerging new mosque. It's an image of a fragile but precious coexistence. So Bosnia is slowly emerging from the shadows, and playing a key role is the tiny Jewish community. 70 years ago, Jews numbered 12,000 here. Now it's just 700. Maybe it's their non-threatening presence that allows them to be trusted to mediate between the big guns.
The interfaith religious council that you sit on, it's all very well for you leaders to sit around and sip coffee and exchange chat in rooms, but is that going to change life on the streets?
I think that we start to do this from two reasons. First, to clarify to ourselves what happened here. And secondly, to show to the general public that if the leaders can sit together, have nice coffee and friendly chat, they can do the same on the grassroots level. At the same time, the Interreligious Council is just the top of the iceberg.
Iz blizine srce smuti, puhnuće behar.
The end of the war saw the birth of Sarajevo's best-known cultural ensemble. This is a 70-strong choir with a difference. Its director drew its members from the Abrahamic faiths to sing music from the three traditions. A noble goal, but the start was almost a total disaster.
It was very difficult to the people to sing song of their enemies. You know, we had a really terrible war, and people were deep wounded in their persons. And in beginning, some people spoke to me when they sang, for example, Muslims sang Orthodox songs. I can't do it. I disgust it.
Because it reminds me of the Serbs.
Yes, and also the Serbs, when we started to sing, Serbs and Croats to sing Islamic songs. And we had to be patient. This spirit of this Abrahamic community first started in the choir.
Father Markovic spent 2 years to no avail, searching for an appropriate name for his musicians. Then finally arrived inspiration from a Latin text.
Pont anima, it means bridge with spirit. So it is the name of our choir.
It's a bridge over the divide to the other community.
Yes, so that is the fundamental idea. Our idea is that through communication with different people, we grow. We don't lose our identity.
This haunting melody is a Jewish-inspired composition. It invokes man to be brave and trust in his spirit. Maybe it's only now that the truth is beginning to dawn on Bosnia's religious leaders that entrenched hostility is no option for the future.
The question of dialogue is not an academic question. The question of dialogue and coexistence and tolerance in Sarajevo is the question of existence. And I would repeat what late Martin Luther King has said on one of his occasions of his inspired speeches, when he said, the question now is not between violence and non-violence. It is the question of non-violence or non-existence.
If we don't make an effort to find the way forward ourselves, then no one can help us. No dollars, pounds, or euros will help. We all have to rise above it and live righteously and justly. That's the only way we can create the best conditions for the future.
When Abraham was asked to countenance the sacrifice of his son, God took him to the very brink of human violence before the truth of his test emerged. In Bosnia, man took himself over that brink and now asks himself, why did this happen? And from where did these dark forces originate? Have these people begun to see God in the face of the stranger? "20,000 miles, 8 countries and 3 world religions. Exchanges on and off camera with hundreds of people. And our common thread? Belief in one God and his universal message of a blessing for us all through our father in faith, Abraham. What do I know now that I didn't at the outset of this daunting quest?"
Throughout the past few months, I've been very mindful of the writing of Jonathan Swift. He wrote that we have just enough religion to hate one another, but not enough to love one another. Perhaps in the end, it's helpful not to talk about the differences between the 3 Abrahamic faiths, so much as a difference between 2 mindsets. Between those people on the one hand who are open to dialogue, who are comfortable with their own religion, but who are happy to explore the ideas of others, and on the other hand, the mind of the classic religious fundamentalist, the person who sees everything in black and white, and who is adamant that he possesses the truth.
So why has religious fundamentalism taken such a grip on the world? Desperate situations breed desperate solutions, and there's no doubt that corrupted religion has moved into a vacuum where traditional political remedies have failed. Fundamentalism might be rooted in psychological insecurity, but it's also a reaction to modernity, to the pace and threat of change. Feeling out of control, the zealot's mind cleaves to simple certainties and is reassured by apparently clear-cut religious texts which shore up a fragile psyche and keep confusion at bay.
But it's also an indictment of religious liberals. Yeah, people like me, if you like, who fail to bang the drum for tolerance and allow the zealots to give the impression that it's their view of the world, and only their view of the world, which is religiously authentic.
But these wider forces of change and globalization lay down the gauntlet to us all. None more so than a liberal Roman Catholic like myself. Here I am, a practicing member of a faith that claims to be the repository of absolute truth, protected from error and the fundamentals of dogma and morals. So where does that claim leave me with regard to other members of the Abrahamic family? It's a question I've pondered more and more during this extraordinary journey, meeting individuals whose take on God is markedly different from my own.
It'd be an easy cop-out to give in to a modern-day relativism of the you've got your faith, I've got mine sort of variety. In this scheme of things, creeds are no more than individual tastes, and the search for a deeper objective truth is sacrificed on the altar of mere individual preference. And we've already met people on this journey, have we not, who balk at this sort of approach and talk of their own religious belief in distinctly uncompromising terms.
God wants justice. And if someone comes to kill you, you have to kill him first.
I will tell you, yes, you will be in the hellfire unless you take Islam.
My intolerance has to do with what I believe are absolutes. Jesus Christ either is the only Son of God or he is not.
Well, Scott, I can have absolute beliefs too, but surely it's a question about how you go about expressing them. First of all, you have to remind yourself that these are religious beliefs held in faith. They're not scientific facts, and I have to hold out the possibility that I might be wrong.
But secondly, in a world seeking greater ease and understanding between the children of Abraham, banking on at the outset about the areas that divide you rather than unite you is a recipe for a dialogue of the deaf. And in this respect, I've come to learn that Judaism is very different from both Islam and Christianity. The particular relationship the Jewish people claim with God has never become a universal one that demands dominion over the souls of all human creatures on the planet. In marked contrast, the two other faiths stake a claim on all mankind. For Christians, Jesus is the revelation of salvation for the whole world. And for Muslims, the Quran handed down to Muhammad is the final and definitive word of God for all his subjects. Yet even within the faiths that stake a universal claim, the stories and searching go on. Man's quest to understand himself and the world around him is an evolving process. Take my own church, for example. In the 15th century, the Roman Catholic Church under Pope Eugene IV was up to its neck in the Inquisition and coming out with texts like this one from the Council of Florence. Those not living within the Catholic Church, not only pagans, but also Jews and heretics and schismatics, cannot become participants in eternal life, but will depart into everlasting fire, which was prepared for the devil and his angels. Yet 500 years later, at the Second Vatican Council, look at the tone of language from the Declaration on Non-Christian Religions. The Catholic Church rejects nothing that is true and holy in these religions. She regards with sincere reverence those ways of conduct and of life, those precepts and teachings, which, though differing in many aspects from the ones she holds and sets forth, nonetheless often reflect a ray of that truth which enlightens all men. Of course, these aren't just abstract texts. They affect the way Abraham's children talk to one another. And in Jerusalem, the Pope's own spokesman gave me pointed proof of just how this story is moving on.
Should Christians still seek to convert Jews?
No.
And on a more personal note, what has changed in my own faith outlook during what has been for me an epic past few months? On that trip to the Holy Sepulchre at the spot of Jesus' crucifixion, I dwelt long and hard on that image. A broken man with outstretched arms. And I'd thought that any true Christian in his dealings with men and women of other religions has to try to imitate just that. Those arms point outwards, not inwards. They invite relationship with a world beyond them. I'd be lying if I'd said that at any point I'd been on the verge of converting to Judaism or Islam. But I have learnt an awful lot about these two faiths. From Judaism, the central ethical demand in the Torah that the Jews embrace the stranger in their midst. And from Islam, the prayerfulness and God-centered life among many Muslims that puts this once-a-week-to-church Western European Christian to shame. 5 times a day they pray, Allahu Akbar, God is the greatest.
And surely this must be right. God is greater than any organized religion. He's bigger than any of our petty personal or political agendas. At the end of the day, there's a choice. Does God serve man, or does man serve God? And if we say we serve God, the biggest test of that is how you treat the person who's radically different than yourself.